Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of Legends and Lectures. I'm not only joined by Mark, but joined by our first returning guest, Dr. Smitty Nathan. Yay!
Yay!
Uh,
So
Hang
happy to
on.
be
I'm a
returning.
returning guest.
you are a feature, Mark.
Oh, okay. You're the furniture. You make bad puns.
Yeah, that's what you do. You come out of
Yeah.
the woodwork to go, and then you
Yeah.
go back in.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Dr.
Fair
Smitty
enough.
Nathan is here with us today to talk about her new podcast and talk about a new feature that she has on her channel. So the podcast is Curiosity Meets the Past, of which I've been a guest. So I'm not only a fan, but I'm also a member.
And you were a great guest. So
Which, yeah,
everyone should watch Michelle's episode.
we
So,
talked about language and the history of certain words, which was really fun. Mark is hopefully going to be a guest soon, and
yes.
the brand new video series that you've been doing, which I love, which was suggested by your child, is the
Yes.
artifact of the day. So please tell everybody what artifact of the day is.
All right. So I want to be clear, my child was the inspiration. I don't think he knew what he was suggesting when he was complaining. So so to dial back a little bit, I have, an elementary age child and they were doing a unit on animals of sort. I don't know which animals, but animals in general. And his teacher would pull up fact of day videos and he loved them, and these are small videos, I think like 2 to 4 minutes long, and they just gave an overview of an animal. So they maybe did lions one day and cheetahs the other day. He's really into big cats, so that's what's prominently in my mind. And then when their unit ended on animals and they transitioned to another unit, there weren't really fact of the day videos that lent itself to that subject. So he was a bit bummed. I know, that there weren't any more fact of the day videos. So then it got me thinking, like, what if we did that, but for archaeology? And,
Hmm.
speaking of puns, I'm not very good at puns, but I was like, fact, artifact, fact of the day, artifact of the day. Maybe we can do something like that. And I want to be very clear, I am not the first person to come up with artifact of the day. If you search for it on whatever search engine you're using these days, you'll see that other people, museums, they've done something like this before. But I think what we're trying to do that might be a little different is, one, it's on our channel, so it will be different than what's out before. We're not copying people's stuff here, but we're just trying to spotlight certain artifacts, especially those that might be a bit unexpected or surprising in the archaeological record, and give people a good enough overview. So we're trying to keep it short, so these videos are anywhere from 2 to 8 minutes in length. They average honestly more 2 to 4 minutes, but you get a good enough overview, you get a visual of what it is, some scholarly interpretation, but also just interpretation in general. And also importantly, like why that's important or relevant to us today. And the other thing with Artifact of the Day that might be a bit different than other Artifact of the Day videos that you might come across is that we really stretch the definition of what could be considered an artifact. So, yeah, so sometime we're gonna have an episode coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. I need to check the schedule. That's looking at a certain type of geoglyph, and whether you would count that as an artifact or not, that could be somewhat questionable. Or, a huge monument. We featured the Temple of Dendor, and you could argue whether that's an artifact or not. So we take a very broad approach to artifacts in the series. So that's probably another differentiator. And that's great for us because we can, feature a lot more things. So,
So,
yeah.
with that in mind, when can something be considered an artifact? Is my drink bottle an artifact if I'm done with
Yes.
it? So, is it always an artifact then?
I like to take an expansive approach, but I want to hear what
Hmm.
Mark has to say. So,
So I was just going to say anything that people have touched, arguably even stuff that people have looked at, can be considered an artifact, I would say. But one of the things that I often point out if I'm doing a say a workshop in a primary school, or frankly, actually even talking to students at university, would be to point at the bin in the room and describe it as in a little archaeological record of what's happened in this room during the day. You know, the moon landings; those are archaeological sites, if not artifacts themselves. And one of the things I found really interesting in recent years has been the expansion that various people have done into digital space, so archaeo gaming as well. And because there you have this sort of multifaceted question of artifact, in so much as first of all, there's archaeology often in the game. There's landscapes, there's artifacts there. They have their own in-game lore and context. But then the game itself is an artifact. So the history that's being presented is someone or a team's perspective on what history might look like in that world. That is a decision. That's an artifactual moment that can be recorded. But then even on top of that, I asked this of I won't name him because I don't want to make it too clear that I'm annoyed with him. But I asked him, well, what about DLC? You know, downloadable content. Is that unstratified material? Is that material that you can't guarantee will come with the game itself, but nonetheless adds to the understanding of the site? And he never got back to me. But yeah, in that sense, for me, I think that's a very good idea. Is to take artifact in its broadest sense. For years now, for my part over on Archaeosoup, I've been doing a series called Archifacts. So archaeology facts, as it archifacts, and that's not looking at something specific, but often it's a little meditation about an idea, often with a very much
Ooh.
tongue-in-cheek kind of humor around it as well. So, I love these sorts of series, and already you've mentioned things there that I had never heard of. So I look forward to seeing where they go.
I
Thank
love
you.
those videos because I love going on them and going, but did that really
Wrong.
happen, Mark?
Yeah,
Or was it
yeah,
the
yeah,
Victorians?
yeah. So okay, so some of the early ones, you've even offered to go through as a series, haven't you? And just
Yes.
help me debunk my own work. It's just like, oh, I'm not sure. There are days when I can't take that.
We'll have to redo that heart one too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So speaking of artifacts and not only that, but I mean interpretations do change over time.
Yes.
As we're going to see what my first artifact, which is the very famous Lovenspenge figurine, the Lion Man figurine, which I
Ah,
just learned last night. My neighbor knew the man who actually found it and put it together. That was really incredible. And she showed me the original book that he wrote about the lion figurine.
nice.
This is a figurine that was found in Germany. And I talk about the interpretation because for a long time, people didn't know. It's about 38,000 years old. People
Mm,
didn't know if it was a lion, if it's a man, if it's somebody in wearing a lion costume,
mhm,
if, and some people even questioned that maybe it was a woman. And then recently it was again discovered that no, there's a piece that is very obviously belonging to a male figure, winkety wink. And but if you look at it, it's pretty amazing. It really does look like somebody wearing a lion head and standing upright. And the idea around, I mean, it was, I think it's just the excavation was in 1939, but it took so long to interpret this and really find out what it was. And who knows, the interpretation might change again. So, Dr. Smitty, do you
mhm.
have a favorite artifact that you would like to share?
I hate picking favorites. Maybe it's just because I've become like a mother of two recently. I'm like, I'm not picking favorites here. But I will say, when in thinking about the our Artifact of the Day series and the artifacts we chose to feature, uh, it's there's one artifact I definitely can talk about that I'm really excited about, especially the backstory behind it for us as a channel. So that is the Key Marco cat, coming from Florida. Uh, so this is a wooden artifact, which as a plant person, I was really excited about. So, and especially the fact that okay, so let me back up real quick. So the Key Marco cat is a pre-Columbian artifact, and it was possibly carved by the Calusa people or their Muspa ancestors. And for me, this was exciting to kind of look into is because I don't work in the that region. I actually work in the Indian Ocean world. I work in Oman and Ethiopia. And one of the great things about the series and just being online as an archaeology educator is that I get to learn so much about
Mm.
different places that I don't otherwise work in. And that's not because I'm not interested in it, but when you're like a scholar or a researcher, you kind of have to go deep, and you only have a finite amount of time to do it. So it's hard to read up about other places. But anyway, this artifact was excavated in 1896 by the anthropologist Frank Hamilton Cushing at the site of Key Marco in Southwest Florida. And we think it was most likely created between 500 and 1500 years ago. And I'll explain why in a second. But one of the cool things about this artifact was the context in which it was found. Essentially, it was found in this layer of muck that didn't have oxygen in it. And that's why it preserved. Because when I think of Florida, like awesome wood preservation is not usually what comes to mind. But you have contexts where wood can survive. And yeah, so essentially in this layer of muck, uh, without oxygen, this artifact was able to preserve. And what's interesting is if you go back and look at the excavation notes, certain objects, as they were being kind of, unearthed, they were getting disintegrated, like because as soon as you get that
Mm.
oxygen exposure, like it's a ticking kind of time bomb in a sense. And we see this for other artifacts as well. I remember when doing a video on the terracotta soldiers and army, they had paint on them.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't necessarily know that, but as they were being excavated, actually, like that paint would just like peel off and go away as soon as they got that exposure to air. And of course, now there are methods that Chinese archaeologists have developed to make sure to preserve those
Mm.
paints and the remnants of paints. But yeah, like exposure to oxygen is a huge preservation issue we have to face. So then going back to the cat itself, it was really fun to get into the possible interpretations of what this could be. Like it is called a cat, but that's again like our modern kind of sense making and categorization of it. I remember reading the book about Florida's Key Marco cat, and oh my gosh, it's by Austin Bell. It was a fascinating book. It's a book just about this cat and figurine. But, there were even questions of whether it was even a cat at all. I think he showed it to some people and they were like, is that a squirrel? And I thought that was hilarious.
That sounds like he's showing them like a crayon drawing he's done. Like, yeah.
Look at my
Yeah.
cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, like maybe in certain angles, it could be a squirrel.
Yeah.
Who
Mm.
knows? So, yeah. So, yeah. So then, there were ideas that, it could be a person in transition from being a human to be a panther.
Mm.
That the colloquial term of panther was thrown out. It's actually like a mountain lion, I believe, if we look at like the like scientific taxonomic categorization were considered. But there was also other theories of how it could be used, from sacred furniture to like representing a living deity. And it was such a fun video in general to just go into because it was using these frameworks and critical thinking and interpretation we're taught and doing it in a different context than what you've studied in. So you really get to be like, okay, like let me go through kind of how I've been trained to approach this and see if I can do it kind of elsewhere for a video. So being really clear, I am not an expert on this artifact, but I'm just really excited about it. And it's just kind of cool to look at too. It's like, okay, what is this? It's one of those things that like, I mean, maybe it's me and because I'm an archaeologist and slightly awkward and strange. I'm like, I think about it. I'm like, huh, could it be this? Could it be that? Like, what? Like, how did that get there? So, yeah. So that's my
Mm.
artifact, the Key Marco cat.
Mark, you are also awkward and strange, so tell us one of your, as we all are on this channel, tell us one of your favorite
Nice save.
artifacts.
Um, well, actually, just very briefly, what you were talking about in terms of interpretation, one of my favorite things that are similar to that is the duck on a stick drawing in Lascaux Cave. It may well be an atlatl, like a spear thrower, because we
Mm.
found one that had a deer and famously doing a poo with a little bird on top. Uh, it's a weird one, but essentially a spear thrower that gives you the mechanical advantage of having two elbows, basically,
Mm.
when you're throwing a spear. But the duck on a stick always gets, especially kids, really intrigued. Like they sort of
Mm.
talk about how maybe it was used as bait, or maybe it was their lunch or something, or I think a friend of mine, not a child, a colleague, suggested it may well be that sort of animistic thing again of maybe
Mm.
this was someone's duck been that they'd been sort of set free to quack in the afterlife, that kind of thing, you know. So yes, interpretation, especially when it's art, can be great fun and also very accessible as well.
Mhm.
But my I've got yeah, my initial pick. I've got a few picks here, but the one that I'm going to pick because I'm a good Welsh boy is the Mold Gold Cape, or as Michelle learned the other day, Gwrthgryg is what the place is called in Welsh. And it's called a cape. It's essentially a pressed solid gold sheet item of clothing that goes around the shoulders, covers the shoulders, so you can't really use your arms in any meaningful way. Certainly not reaching up above your shoulders. And it dates to between 1900 and 1600 BCE, found in 1833 by workers in a gravel pit. So not what Mold or Llywelyn is in North Wales, not too far from where I'm from. And I came across this in the context of a ghost story. People would tell a story of how on the road, sort of between, let's say for argument's sake, Denbigh and Mold or something, you you would hear of travelers going in the dark, and they'd just see this light in the night, this golden shining light that would scare the bejesus out of them, and then travel through them and keep on going along the road, and they'd follow it and go through the forests and pushing bushes out the way, and they'd see it disappear into the hillside. And this hillside came to be known as Goblin's Hill, or Bryn yr Ellyllon, which an awful lot of hills. If there's anything that's slightly bumpy in North Wales, it's given a mysterious name. And this place was being used for gravel. Well, it's not entirely clear whether the workmen were digging or refilling a gravel pit, but nonetheless, it was gravel for building purposes. And it's a curious one because the Gold Cape is quite intricate. It's got bands of pressed decoration, almost looks like beadwork, or even fabric in gold. Probably had leather lining. Some copper sheets were found with it as well that might have been part of the construction, and also fragments of cloth, I believe, but also 200 to 300 amber beads as well. And amber, right through to the early medieval period, tends to be found in these contexts, tends to have come from sort of the Black Sea. It floats and appears on the coast, and then people trade it across Europe. So this person, whoever they were, male or female, it's not entirely clear, um, or some third entity in that sense, was very individual. And in that sense, the Bronze Age in this part of the world was making some people very much different from the people around them. So we have just up the road, again, sort of in that sense, equidistant from where I'm from in the other direction on the coast, in a place called Llandudno, is the Great Orme, which is a huge outcrop of rock that juts out into uh, the the Irish Sea and the Bay of Merseyside and this kind of thing. And it was named by Norse seafarers. It means the great worm, great monster, the Great Orme. But inside it is a copper mine where they extracted enough copper ore to fill St. Paul's Cathedral in London. A huge amount of ore, all done using antler pickaxes. You see, antler pickaxes. I don't know if we were recording at that point. But and all we find really is evidence of the mining left behind is the pickaxes. We have no idea of the identities or in that sense, the caste or the strata in society that these people were from. But they were clearly not the people buried complete in individual graves wearing clothes made of solid gold, not even gold thread, gold sheet.
Mm.
So this what's sometimes called the rise of the individual, especially in contrast to earlier Neolithic graves where bits of people were circulating through communities and ending up in essentially communal focus of interest, points of interest for the dead. The Gold Cape represents quite possibly a power structure across North Wales. And incidentally, the copper mine, the copper ore mine there was the largest in northwestern Europe. And they were probably bringing in tin from Cornwall, making bronze, and getting very, very. And I'm not. And this is an interesting point that I don't know if you guys have an opinion on this. I always struggle to use the word wealthy. Is it right to say wealthy? In that sense,
Mm.
it's hard not to sort of slip into sort of like a capitalistic, this person was a magnate of industry. Well, were they, or did they just know a secret? Did they just know how to mix copper
Mm.
and tin together to make bronze? It's
Or
it's
maybe
hard not
maybe
to.
the use of that metal was ubiquitous throughout their culture. Maybe it wasn't a symbol of wealth at that point.
Possibly not. I mean, it's a unique object. There's only one of the amber beads which survives. The rest, it seems, were picked up by some of the workers when they found it. And also, actually, bits of the cape were also chipped off as well. I think it's been
Mm.
slowly but surely reconstructed over time. And Wales is known for gold. You can go gold panning in some rivers today. It is a place where you can find gold, but I don't think it was ubiquitous. I think it was. This is a special person of some description.
Mm.
And I suppose one final thing, just on the note of being a good Welsh boy, is to say that it'd be wonderful to see it not in London. The British Museum is such a black hole for such an irresistible force in that sense for items from across the United Kingdom and the world that actually it gets lost in that museum. People don't appreciate it for what it actually is and what it represents and how yes, of course, socioeconomically, North Wales is quite poor. It would be wonderful to have such an item to bring footfall to a museum that could feature it. But also, I think it deserves, as with even things like Sutton Hoo, etc., a very English item like Sutton Hoo or burial set. Having everything in one place in London does not mean actually that it's accessible to all. And so I have a colleague who I often work with who lives in London who talks about it's wonderful having all this stuff in the British Museum. We can get to see it. And I go, no, you get to see it. I've never seen the Mold Gold Cape in person.
I've
You
never
know,
seen any of
Wow.
those things in person, no.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, and obviously, it's not. I also need to very quickly say, being the only Brit here, it's not just the British Museum. There are other museums that have similar problems as well. But the British Museum, certainly within the UK, is especially within England and Wales actually is so inescapable that
Mm.
it would just be nice just to sort of spread it out a little bit. And to be fair, they do this. They do offer loans of, for example, Sutton Hoo material back to East Anglia and so on and so forth. But it's only ever a loan.
Yeah.
It always comes back to London, and yeah, that's a whole other kettle of fish. Yeah.
No, but I think it's important when we're
Mm,
talking about artifacts, especially if they're more discrete objects.
mm,
Again, we were talking about a bit more of an expansive definition of artifact, but
mm,
I know for us, at least for artifact of the day, the nature of how an artifact is held,
mm,
especially discrete artifacts, really plays into how we choose what artifacts to feature. And
mm,
the the logic behind that, at least for us, is that, one, big famous objects and big famous museums, there's a lot of discourse around repatriation, and that's important discourse to be had. But there's also
mhm,
these objects that, you know, might not be as, obviously significant to people,
mm,
based on, different paradigms and different things like that, but, that are also held and maybe tied up in certain places. And
or even
they're
in
not getting,
archives. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm,
And not
mm,
getting the visibility they deserve. And, there's all these other issues that go into that. But I think for us in our series, we were like, well, we want to be really explicit about where the artifacts are, how they're
mm,
being held. And if there's any issues on them, we want to be very clear
mm,
about that. So yeah, I think that is important because that's also as archaeologists, we talk about context a lot.
Mhm.
It's not just about like the context in which a find was discovered, but for us in the series, it's like, okay, it's what's the context in which these artifacts are now held or
Mm.
visible or not visible to the
Mm.
public. So yeah, I think it's important.
And
Or
just
even,
one final thing just before Michelle moves on, I would add to that is the implication of where these artifacts end up
Hmm.
is
Mhm.
often that nowhere else can be trusted with them,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
I think is deeply unfortunate.
Which
And in
is
the
why
case of the
everything
Mold
should
Gold
be in
Cape,
my house.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in the case of the Mold Gold Cape, the implication is that people in North Wales are not careful enough or cultured enough or whatever to look after this material. Whether or not people actually would say that isn't, but certainly one of the reasons why everything goes to London is partly because of that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's been overtly said for
Mm.
other artifacts from
For
different
Greece, it's
places.
been said. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, that brings probably a whole other episode worth of discussion on the implications of that. But yeah, but it's important to bear in mind, not just bear in mind, but, you know, to have that discussion or to
Mm.
mention when, we're publicly talking about like certain
Mm.
artifacts or any artifact. I think it's a really important consideration in, the public education of these artifacts.
Mm.
I
So,
wanted to mention something that Dr. Smitty had put out on her channel, which is one of the pegs of Ötzi, the Iceman, because people look at it and they go, it's just a peg. Why is this important? And so, something like that, which you've never seen before, is
mm,
Mm.
really important to archaeologists, but maybe audiences observing this artifact would think
Mhm.
it's absolutely nothing. And yet this
yeah.
peg is really important to to the archaeological record and an archaeologist standpoint. So even something that doesn't look, because museums like to put things that are flashy and exciting,
Yeah.
and but something like that peg is absolutely monumental to
Mm.
as something that's never been discovered before. And I
Mhm.
think it's great that you've covered it on your channel in
Oh,
such detail.
thanks.
Um,
Well, thank you.
but even though it might not be everybody's favorite artifact, it is probably one of the most important. But
It's the most viewed artifact of the day video, so I think it's, resonating with people. But I think it's more about like the debate about it. We got a lot of flint knappers and uh, lithic enthusiasts coming on and chatting about that. And I did want to make a quick point that, one thing I kind of wish I mentioned in the video is this two things. One thing we hear a lot is like, oh, researchers were baffled or like initially baffled. And I mean, that word
always.
initially is really important because I wanted to humanize this part. It's like, yeah, when you're doing archaeology, sometimes you're working and you come across things you haven't seen before because you are one human with like certain lived experiences.
Yeah.
And even if you are initially baffled, that is a moment. Like we just don't continue to be just say like, oh, I'm just baffled like all the time. No, it's a
It,
moment. Like, and
it
then
would
we
it would
do
be
research.
it'd
Then
be
we consult
amazing.
people.
It'd be amazing
Yeah,
if at certain times during the day, someone has to come in onto an archaeological site just to sort of, hey, stop, stop, because people are just like, oh, just like stuck in,
ex-
baffled. No, no, come on, stop
exactly.
being baffled. Like focus.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no,
Like,
it's not a permanent state. Yeah.
no, it is definitely not a permanent state. And, I think it's important to say that like when you don't know something, and that's what we
Mm.
try to highlight in our channel, but we don't want to perpetuate whatever tropes being created about like the constantly baffled archaeologist. Like, yeah, we have
Mm.
constant moments when we're baffled, and then, we talk to people. That was another thing in the Ötzi video. We had a lot of flint knappers and people say, oh, well, if they just consulted with people who did this, then they
Yeah.
could tell you and we would know. And it's like, okay, when I say we had never seen it before, it's not we had never seen it before in modern times. We had
Mm.
never seen it
Mm.
before in that context.
Mm.
And prior to that context. So yeah, so I think those are some things that I want to be a bit better about in explaining a little bit that like nuance. But some of the stuff kind of just like mind boggles me, or baffles me, I should say. So,
This
but
for
it's
Go
not
get
archaeologists,
the
custom
Mark,
heat
staged.
drum. What are
Mark,
you for?
oh God, Mark and I, we have a whole list of like because obviously we have baffled and every time somebody comes a stupid headline says baffled like no they're not baffled and here is exactly what this artifact was. As you said they were baffled for 5 seconds and then they did some research and so not only Mark and I have this whole thing with like the with the Roman dodecahedron where everybody's like oh
Mm.
it's for knitting going it's not for knitting
No,
we know
it's
it's
not for
not
me.
for knitting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But there is something really compelling. I mean, we've talked about this on in other places, but there's something really compelling about that explanation, though, where someone writes essentially a script where
Mhm.
archaeologist goes, "What's this for?" and then a grandma, often it's someone's grand, sort of goes, "Oh, interesting," and then it sort of describes her turning it over in her hand and then saying,
Mm.
"I think it's for knitting," and there's something really true actually about the fact that people's experiences should be listened to and can feed into your research, especially if you're a half decent researcher.
Yeah.
But similarly, expertise matters, and when we say it's not for knitting, it's because we've examined that possibility and it's been shown not to be the case, not least because knitting wasn't around in Roman times. So, and also as well, just one final thing on that, the holes themselves, unless you're making like, some of the holes are massive, like genuinely huge. Some of them are tiny, smaller than a baby's finger. This is not for producing fingers for gloves. And other explanations are very welcome. And that's the point. They should be welcome and they are welcome. But let's move on from knitting. Um,
I was gonna say with regard to the copper, my favorite artifact of all time is the world's oldest Yelp review, and that is
oh,
the internet's
Okay.
favorite, the complaint tablet to our good buddy
Yes.
Aya Nashir. And
yeah.
I think I'm so glad that what I love about this artifact is not only what it says, but where it was found.
Hmm.
And I love that the internet has just glommed onto this and now said this is the greatest archaeological artifact of all time. And it is, and it's wonderful. It was written around 1750 BC,
Hmm.
and it is it's a small, tiny check box that's about I think it's 4 inches by 2 inches, and that's how small this thing is. And it was found in his house. He collected bad Yelp reviews. So it's that's the best thing about this thing.
Yeah.
Is he and it
Wow.
wasn't the only one. He collected he so we I mean we'll never know really why. Either he collected it as a ha 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 suck it Nani or he collected it because maybe he did take it to heart because the
Mm,
whole thing is Nani, the person who bought copper ingots from him, complaining that these ingots are shit and
mm,
that she doesn't want them and that she's going to return them. And but this Nani sent well technically Nani is a man not a woman, but Nani sent his servant with the money to complete the transaction, but with the complaint. And so he kept the copper was substandard and not accepted, but he kept this, and they know we discovered this because they found it in Aandashir's
mm.
house, and I th and we even know like the room that he kept it in, and I think that's just so delightful that
One bad comment, man, it can
yeah
slice through
Yeah.
everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
a
we
good lesson in why context matters and is
Yeah.
also delightful. So.
Yeah. But
Dr. Smitty,
wow.
what's your next artifact?
Mm. Let's see. Okay, I we haven't actually. Why don't we go to you, Mark, and then I'll circle back if that works,
Okay.
because you had
Okay.
some prepared. So
I do, yeah.
yeah, go for it.
Uh, I get beaten up if I don't have them, basically. Michelle sends the heavies. Um, how many more artifacts would you like me to comment on in this episode, Michelle?
You're just a few that you love a lot.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to choose then. Uh, I'm going to split the remaining three into two. So there's two categories. So let's go with the first one, which I think is lovely. And this category is the production of clothing, as evidenced by two items which are separated in time and space by a great distance. But the first one is an item that I used to live and work with every day in York, and it's a woolen sock,
Mm,
recovered in Coppergate.
yes.
It was made using null binding, not knitting. Don't say knitting. That's not
That's
what
not
it's.
what it's for.
No,
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
no, no.
null binding, which is a knotless netting, and it would have been produced using items that I'll come on to talk about.
Dr.
Uh,
Smitty has a video on the show, whole video about
oh,
socks.
fantastic, fantastic,
And
wonderful.
this one will be an artifact of the day video by
Yeah.
the end
Oh,
of the year.
brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah. So keep
Um,
telling.
I love this sock, and like I say, I used to look at it, but everyone else was looking at the metal stuff and the keys and the but I always used to look at this sock, and it's beautiful in so much as it came out of the backyard essentially of a 10th century dwelling, and it had been carefully made, and obviously to fit someone's foot, and it had a little band of red thread towards the ankle, which was madder root dyed. Madder root, you sort of boil it up, and it's quite
Mhm,
a what's the word? Tenacious dye. It really
mhm.
dyes stuff bright red. So it's not like blood that goes brown or black; it stays red. And it just speaks of comfort and humanity and warmth and the need to, you can almost imagine someone's mum saying, make sure you put your socks on, this kind of thing. It's also the only null bound sock object found in England, specifically England, I believe. I don't know if they mean here England as in the United Kingdom or not. So I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But they suggest therefore that this might be crucial just for demonstrating that trans North Sea trade of this craft. So this craft which kept people's feet warm, and which is just a beautiful little thing. And socks are ubiquitous. And obviously, this person, right up to today, we always lose single pairs of socks or single socks from a pair, and this one
Yes.
is no different. There's only one left. The other one, who knows where it went? Who knows?
In the
But
dryer somewhere.
yeah, presumably, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Björn's just like, hey, you buy the washing machine, you take what you're given. But no, so there's that. But crucially, it was would have been made using this next item, which I'm lumping together. But uh, in this instance, I'm talking about a very deeply prehistoric version of this item, and that is bone sewing needles.
Mm,
So I've always adored the fact that some of the earliest evidence from the Stone Age that we
mm,
find in Europe, especially during the Ice Age, is not stone tools, but bone tools. And these bone sewing needles with eyes put into them as well speak not only to the need to have clothes. One of my favorite mentors wrote a paper many years ago about horses and people actually, but he talked about how actually clothes were the environment, were the cultural buffer that allowed essentially a tropical ape to go into environments that they were not designed for, and this really is the epitome of that. People with extremely dexterous fingers, just like us, with minds and plans, just like us, making not just skins, not just that sort of leopard skin sort of thong that we often see in cartoons, but intricately crafted clothes, hundreds of individual parts sewn together, tailored to fit someone, to keep them warm in the harshest of conditions. And in this instance, we're talking about Magdalenian sewing needles dating between
mm.
12 and 17,000 years ago, not BCE but BP, and there's lots of them, and they often come with other non-stone items. So obviously, we sometimes see like impressions of cord for netting and this kind of thing. But there's just something tremendous about this. These people weren't saying "ugh," these people weren't struggling. They were making excellent decisions and not just surviving but thriving in conditions that challenge people today. And actually, I love the fact that some of these clothes, and if you compare it to, it's an imperfect comparison, but the Killer Kitsock mummies I think in Greenland or Iceland, Greenland. I always get them confused. But mummies, essentially, from what we would think of as being the Middle Ages, but wearing clothes that were very similar. Um, this technology was long lasting, and it was form fitting in a way that they would come and see your Primark made T-shirts and mass produced clothing, and they would scoff at it. They would go, "What are you wearing? That's not going to keep you warm." And then so that through thread, no pun intended, but you're welcome to take it as intended.
Oh,
Uh,
no.
between the sock and the sewing needle, I think is a beautiful thing, and it's a sign, it's an aspect of human life that's so universal, but also is often not thought of, just like childhood in that sense. It's much more common to think of the Stone Age, the hard stuff, the tools, the weapons, this kind of thing. Whereas actually, yeah, what about the stuff that keeps you warm or gives you underwear? It's a very important stuff.
I love
Underwear
that.
ubiquitous in many cultures.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love that artifact especially. And I love your interpretation of it. It's the warmth aspect is something I definitely thought about, but
Mm.
I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it, and now I am. So add that to my
Well,
list of shower thoughts.
yeah, that's mainly because I spent a lot of days dressed as a Viking
Yeah.
outside the museum in the rain.
Ah,
So, and my
that'll make
socks
you
were not
think
as good
about.
as that sock. So,
Yeah. And
very wet feet.
yeah, I hear you. And one of my favorite features of that sock is that there's a large hole on the bottom of
Mm,
it.
mm, yeah,
And we think that a patch was
yeah.
likely adhered to it. And of course, the patch isn't there anymore.
Mm,
But for me, what I gravitated to in terms of thinking about this sock, is the fact that, people also, repaired items, and
mm,
it might be for like a functional reason, but it could also maybe be for sentimental. They just loved that sock and they wanted to keep wearing it. Who
yeah.
knows? But it was cool to see that and also see that mentioned in,
Mm.
the interpretation. There you go.
And also in that sense, I love the fact that darning and fixing your clothes was a crucial skill to have. It
Hmm.
wasn't just for a certain part of society. It wasn't just, for example, for women. Everyone had to know how to do it. And again, that also speaks to this relationship between the, yeah, that sort of sentimental sense of what you're wearing and why you're wearing it, compared to some of the worst aspects of fast fashion. And you get it, you wear it, you chuck it out, because you're
Mhm.
bored. Whereas this sock, clearly, someone wanted to keep wearing the sock.
We
It's
still
good.
do have remnants of those crafts. So,
Yeah.
for example, there's a difference
Yeah.
between shoemakers and cobblers, right? There's
Mm,
also a difference
Mhm.
between carpenters and bodgers. Bodging obviously is not a great profession anymore, but
yeah.
people who made the thing versus people who knew how to fix
Mhm.
the thing.
Mm,
And now everybody's like, oh yeah, do it yourself. But these used to be really important parts of society and aspects of society where if something broke, you couldn't just go out to a store and buy another one. You needed to have
yeah.
somebody who could fix it. And
Mhm.
so, no, as Mark says, knowing how to fix these artifacts, even people who clean up artifacts or who restore artifacts, that this is something that we still value. And restoring artifacts, like the person who rebuilt the German lion, because that lion
Mm,
was sitting in a box and it was in over 200 pieces, I think. And
mm,
it took him a very long time to figure out how, like ancient Lego, trying to figure out how everything went together.
mm,
And that skill is still highly valued, but it's something that very few people have nowadays.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
We have time for a few more artifacts. Dr. Smitty, would you like to share one of yours?
Sure. And I guess we'll go on the theme of socks again, if that's okay, because Mark's example reminded me of another sock we featured, not necessarily an artifact of the day, but in our Lost Socks video. And this was, I think, where was it found? It was found in Akhmim in oh no, sorry, in Antinopolis, in Egypt, and it dates to around 100 to 350 CE. And it is this woolen sock which has a design feature called a sock toe. So,
Right.
but so it's essentially if you think of a sock, and instead of if you've ever had toe socks,
Hmm.
those have like individual areas for all toes.
Hmm.
Well, this sock toe had two. So you had like, yeah, you had the toe, and then I think you had everything else.
Hmm.
That's how it was divided up. But my favorite part of this artifact is not exactly the artifact itself. It's a picture that has been associated with it later, or that style, which shows socks and sandals. So it just shows that like socks and sandals have been a thing for some
Yeah,
time. So,
yeah.
yeah. So that's one example that came to mind in our conversation. So I think another example, if we're going kind of on the fiber arts train, is an example we featured, and it was our first artifact of the day videos, and they were around quipus.
Right. Yes.
And yeah, quipus are an Andean artifact. They're essentially a bunch of knots. There's different ways that they form.
Hmm.
You can have like a main top like string, let's say, and then you have other strings coming down from it. And there's different knots, and multiple knots can be on one string. There can be
Mm.
other artifacts attached to the kipo. There's a lot of diversity. There's not a ton of them preserved. I think there's over, I think, what's the current count? Somewhere between 900 to 1,000. So a decent amount. But, with the different quipos that we're finding, we're just learning so many different aspects of the Andean past, and
Mm.
especially the diversity of what was happening in the Andean past. But the big thing with quipus is that, they have really made us rethink what it meant to write and read.
Hmm.
And I think that is so cool.
Mm.
So the quipu in particular that we featured on our channel, it's called the Koyata quipu, and it was found in the village of Koyata, and that's where it remains today. And it's actually a narrative quipu. So for a long time, people thought quipus were like, oh yeah, like they recorded numbers on this. It was accounting. Um, yes, but yes, and uh, this Kipu in particular recorded a specific battle and recounted that, which I thought was really cool. So we talk about that in the video, but there's more work being done on Kipus all the time.
Hmm.
One piece of research that came out in August, I believe, is that we often thought Kipus were something for the elite. Or as
Mm.
we were debating, the wealthy, whatever that might mean. And we're learning more that like no, this was a skill that was a bit more widespread than we initially thought, and not just bound to, a certain class of people,
Mm.
which is
Mm.
really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, much admiration for quipus. It was such a fascinating aspect to explore, and in a part of the world that I don't specialize in, which is a lot of fun as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's my
Hmm.
other artifact to throw out
No,
there. So
I like it.
yeah.
I think at the time, because I think I've talked about this before as well. The, speaking of puns, I couldn't help but come up with it that it was not a bad way to communicate.
Yes.
And
I
that's our
like
show,
that.
folks. I'll see you later. Great.
I liked it.
Bye.
I have one more
Go for it, Mike.
artifact for you. It's actually interestingly enough similar in the sense of um, people's presumptions about the continuity of language, art, and knowledge. And this is one that's local to me now, and in that sense, I apologize to the audience for bringing up another early medieval artifact from Britain, but it's interesting because it plays against it's just as quipus play against this idea of an illiterate society, or as you say, it being simple accounting. I think conquistadors noticed that it might have been linked with accounting or something like that, but the fact that it's more complex than that. People often talk about early post-Roman Northern Europe as being in a dark age, or at least they used to talk about it like that. Um, but this artifact is fascinating. Again, I've only ever seen a copy of it in a local museum in Newcastle because the original is in London. But this is something called Frank's casket.
Hmm.
It's Frank. It's not Frank's apostrophe s. It's Frank's named after the gentleman. Emphasis on aristocratic gentleman who donated it to the British Museum. It's made of, I believe, whale bone. and it is a six-paneled box, basically, which demonstrates in its intricate carvings various things. Each panel shows a different thing from history. So the rear panel, I believe, shows the fall of Rome. No, no, sorry, fall of Jerusalem. Sorry, taking of Jerusalem by Titus in the First Jewish-Roman War. The left-hand panel shows the founding of Rome by Romulus and Remus, with writing around the edge in runes and this intricate sort of landscape depiction of that, and the she-wolf and the boys. But on the front is my favorite thing uh, ever to tell kids about, especially when we're talking about runes. Because runes, we talk about how it's an excellent way of writing in a carved medium. There's no curved lines, really, this kind of thing. And on the front of this box, you have on the left hand side, there's a lock in the middle at the top. But to the left of that lock, you have a depiction of the story of Wayland the Smithy, and it's a very big story, but this is a scene from that story. But on the right, I'm just going to describe it to you. There's three men, and they're all kneeling, and just in front of the men is a woman holding a child, and just above them, there's this bright, sparkly thing. What could that be? We're coming up to that time of year.
An ornament?
It's
It's the
it,
the
it's the
nativity.
nativity. Yeah.
Native.
The
Oh,
a depiction of the nativity. And but
nice.
and it's not just because it's the nativity that this gets me excited, but the thing I love about it is this is one of the places where they've literally labeled, so separate from the writing and the border, there's actually a label just above the three magi or kings or whatever, which has and by this point when I'm talking to the kids, we've gone through the foothark and what the letters are, and I asked them, can you read this sign? And they look at it and it says Magi, Magi. You know, you can literally read it, and
Oh,
it's that connection. It's the fact that they get to discover this little moment for themselves. It's the fact that the depiction is really. I mean, often carved depictions of Mary and the baby are often a bit weird. Like you'll often have like basically little grown-up humans, more or less, not babies.
Hmm.
But this one's quite nice, quite sort of quite abstract. But it's the fact that this box, far from being Dark Age, represents people living in this part of the world who aren't relying on what would become London for their history, aren't relying on these places that now people in the Northeast, especially, which is a fairly poor and deprived area, are encouraged to think of as being their betters and being the source of their history. Far from it. This box actually is people who know about the world, know about the world's recent history, know about what they believe and how they're mishing and mashing Germanic and Christian beliefs together
Hmm.
on this item. It's loud, it's proud, it's intricate, it's beautiful, and it's everything that people should, um, in the best way, want to take from an artifact found in their midst. In that sense, I think yeah, that's probably that little moment. Yeah, the Magi when they go oh, Magi, it's just magical. No pun intended there either. But, but
But were they magicians, Mark? And were there three?
there were three gifts. There were three gifts. Yeah, supposedly. Yeah, yeah, it's a gorgeous little thing. And the right hand panel, just for folks who are curious, is still, I believe, a little bit of a mystery as to what exactly it represents.
Okay.
And also that there's a gorgeous lid as well, of which it was made of three panels of bone. The central panel still exists. It probably would have had a little metal boss on top, and it shows a legend of Egil as well.
Hmm.
So it's gorgeous.
That's
And
Yeah,
amazing.
it's
yeah, I
early
would.
8th century, so I mean, obviously the Anglo-Saxons have been Christianized long before that, but
Yeah.
it's interesting that it does, like Mark said, it's one of those few things that we have where you have both sets of imagery. You have
Mm,
legendary
mm,
figures, and you have religious figures,
mm.
and it's pretty interesting that it has both on it, and
Yeah.
Hmm.
nobody really thought about what's in it, Mark. What's in Frank's casket?
well, it was empty in that sense.
Mm.
It was found, I believe, as panels. I seem to recall um, that it had broken down over time, and eventually one of the panels was found separate in someone's drawer, and then it was reunited with the rest of the box later on after the rest of the box had been sold to the British Museum. Or no, sorry, or donated. I'll just want to just double check that. I don't want to besmirch Frank. Blah 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 blah. Former
Sir
owner. It was
Augustus Walson Franks, who gave it.
it
He
was
gave it.
donated.
Yeah, he gave
It was
it.
donated.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really wish you said ornament, but like kids could just please tell your kids next time that like if they didn't guess correctly, they could still be an archaeologist,
Oh yes,
eventually.
definitely,
Because it's
definitely.
okay to be baffled.
Yeah,
Yes, for a
exactly.
moment.
Yeah,
And then I listened to the experts and learned.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And it's I don't know. I think that's the thing, and it's so. This is why I think archaeology is a wonderful way of getting people to talk about history. Is that it's dealing with, it's bottom up, isn't it? It's dealing with stuff that you can handle, stuff that you can hand out in some circumstances, and stuff which is the stuff of life. And obviously I don't want to go down that sort of like midnight student rambling kind of thing. What does it all mean? But it's just beautiful to have those little moments, and I think having, as you say, an artifact focus is
mm,
a great way of just having people just it's like a thought for the day, and
yeah.
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
That's the important part of artifacts, though. Why look at them? Why study them? Why do we have an interest in them? It's
Mm,
because they're a connection to humanity and life and another time
mm,
that we don't might not know anything about. And they're important to the continuation of culture, the continuance of history.
mm,
And that's why I really love this series so much. And
Oh,
I can't wait to see what other artifacts you're going to be putting up for your artifact of the day. And I thank specifically your son for being so upset that he didn't have his fact of the day in class anymore, that he inspired. Look at Mar the if people are only listening, Mark's like, oh, he's got the
oh.
twinkles in his eyes. And this is the important thing about teaching archaeology to children and
Mhm,
teaching them why artifacts are important. And again, that concept of continuance, that concept of
mm,
perpetuation of not only humanity, but the history of the world. That's really
mm,
important. And I love that you highlight artifacts that people might not know about and
mm.
that people just get really interested about them and fight about them in the comments.
yes, they do. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on and be able to talk about the series, but also just hear about the artifacts that resonate with you and why
Mm.
they do. And yeah, I'm excited to keep going. And thank you for having me back.